Hey guys, welcome back again. So it's been a long time though. So we have actually decided to come up with a video on going through some of the things that actually would help you to level up your React game. Okay, so these are the things that I actually learned throughout my development career. So I thought of sharing that with you guys so that you could actually become a better React developer. Okay, so these are very minor things which would actually make a lot of differences. So we think we might need complex tools or complex techniques to become or to build a better application in React, but those things are not required. Okay, so I'm gonna just go over 10 things that you could easily implement. Okay, it's not like a very complex thing that requires you months of training to understand or something like that. It's just a very basic things where you can actually get those things actually implement those things in your development within few days. Okay, so we will look into these things. Okay, so which would actually take your React skills to next level. Okay, so let's get started. And this whole thing is also available in a blog format as well. So if you are more of a blog reader like me who actually loves to read and then understand instead of watching a video or something, so there's a blog as available for this one as well. I've written this in a blog format as well, which is available in the description. Okay, so there are these are the things that will be going on today as well in the video. But if you are someone who likes to watch videos and learn, you're free to watch the video. All right, so now coming back, so the first thing that we'll be learning is TypeScript. Okay, I mean this is not a TypeScript tutorial though, but I would say if you're a React developer, do not just stay in JavaScript, because of course it's okay to get started with JavaScript when you are learning React. Learn to write React code in JavaScript, the JSX one. Learn to write in JavaScript, build application in JavaScript, but then move to TypeScript. Okay, as soon as possible. Don't rush though, but move to TypeScript, because once you step into the development world, right, once you actually start building application for the real users, right, you need TypeScript over there, because you need type safety, because you cannot rely on JavaScript every single time and be in assumption that you will actually get a real the data that you think that you would receive. Sometimes the data structure might change, that might break the application, or you might expect that some component or some function may pass you string, but instead it might pass you undefined, or it might pass you a number or something. So JavaScript by default is not equipped to handle these conditions. It lets you to do that, it expects you to do that, and the best way to do it is with TypeScript. Okay, so whatever the code you write in JavaScript, you can do that in TypeScript. There's no difference, except you start defining some types. Okay, so for example, your languages like C, Java and everything, you have to define what type of variable it is, right? So if you declare a variable, you have to specify either whether it's a string or it's a number or something like that, right? So similarly in TypeScript you have to do that. Okay, so in TypeScript you have to define whether you expect a string or an array, or what type of data types is an array contain, something like that. Okay, so start writing learning TypeScript and then implement TypeScript in your code. Okay, so I have a pretty good example here. So I've linked these code bases in the description as well if you want to take a look at the code. Okay, so let me zoom in a bit. Yeah, so here you go. So here I've declared an interface. So interface is like a type, declaring a type. Okay, so I have a component called greetings. So this greetings, this is actually a different component. This is a different component. I've actually written down in the same file. Okay, so this greeting component actually returns a dev element that says hello. Okay, and then it accepts a prop. So the prop is name. Okay, and it's a type of string. So in case of JavaScript, you don't define these things, right? You just say name, right? You just say you just declare the name of the component, that is greeting, and then you just say name. So in that particular moment, or in that particular case, we actually don't know what type of data structure or data type, so not data structure, is data type, that the name is, right? The name can be, we assume that okay, the name should be a string. Okay, my name is Pawan, so I'm going to just enter Pawan, right? But in some cases there can be number, people can pass number to it. Let's say in QA, you send this out to a QA team for testing, and they might test this with a number. They might think okay, let me pass a number to it, let's see what happens. Then it breaks. In this case it won't break, because it's just a simple component. Let's say you're actually using it for some computation, for some process, right? It might break over there, then it's a failure. That's the reason in TypeScript what we do is we define it. Okay, see, I'm defining an interface called props or a type, and then I'm saying that have a name property, and that would be a type of string. Now I'm gonna say react.functional component. So this FC stands for functional component. Okay, so I'm saying that this greeting is a type of functional component in React, and it accepts a prop. So these are the types. So okay, this can be anything. This can even be my name as well. Okay, this can be anything. Okay, but whatever you have inside this, okay, like a name or whatever you have, that will be the one that you receive here. So you can just say props here, and you can say props.name, something like that. This also works. Okay, so now what happens is when you actually let people use this, or when you say, let's say a Q&A team tries to send number. Okay, let me send number here, 1 2 3. See, this starts throwing an error. And even though this is not even running right now, so it's running here because it's just a output of dev, so it accepts everything. But if you have any computation, you can actually catch errors. So you can see now, let's say I'm actually developing and I'm actually trying to pass 1 2 3 here. You can see it's actually shouting here, right? It says that type number is not assignable to type string. In case of JavaScript, this doesn't happen. It just accepts anything, right? So with the help of TypeScript, what you can do is you can easily catch errors that might occur in the future, right? So this would have been an error in the future if it was JavaScript, right? This would crash an application in the future. But in TypeScript, you were able to find this out right at the moment, right? This initial moment, I was able to find out that this might be a problem for me, right? So that's one of the very good importance of very good use of TypeScript here. So start using TypeScript. I'm going to tell you one thing. When you start TypeScript, right, for a week or two, you will actually feel very annoyed by defining these types. Okay, so you'll actually find it very hard to define every single type every single time. But moving on, you'll actually find this very convenient because you don't have to worry in the future like this might crash or why is it crashing. It's not even hard to debug because you can backtrace using types like, okay, are we passing the correct types or not? Something like that. Okay, so start with TypeScript as soon as possible in your developing career, but do not rush. Okay, understand JavaScript first, work with JavaScript first, and then move to TypeScript. Okay, and tip number 2, the next thing. What is it? Prop types. So, okay, so right now you understood all these things. That's great, amazing. But what if you don't know TypeScript yet? What if you're just getting started, but you want to implement these things? You want to make sure that your component is type safe, right? What do you want to do? You don't know TypeScript yet. You're still JavaScript. You're learning JavaScript. You're working with JavaScript, which is not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. But you don't want to rush to TypeScript, but you want to implement these type of check in your React app. Don't worry. For that, we have something called prop types. Okay, we have something called prop types. So prop types is actually a npm library. Okay, and you can, what happened? Okay, yeah, you can do that with JavaScript. Okay, so this is the JavaScript component. You can see it says app.js, but here it says app.tsx. Okay, here is app.jsx. Okay, JavaScript. So now what I'm doing is I'm having the same component greeting. Okay, but at the end what I'm doing is I'm actually defining prop types here. Okay, I'm actually defining prop types. I'm saying that this prop type would be name. Okay, and I'm saying that prop types.string is required. So what I'm doing is same thing what we did here. Here we define name is a string, right? And then when you add in TypeScript, right? Here's a trick in TypeScript. If you add question mark here, all right, in question mark here, it means that it's optional. But if you remove it, by default this is required. Okay, TypeScript will assume that this name is required. And similarly here, you have to specify that it is required. So now what happens is whenever you're passing a prop to this, prop types will verify whether it's a string. Okay, and if it exists or not. If it doesn't exist, it will start throwing a warning. It won't throw an error, it will throw a warning. Okay, now if I go to console, ignore this. Let me just send numbers. I'll send 1 2 3 here. Save it. Refresh this. There you go. You got a warning, right? Failed prop types. Invalid prop name of type number supplied to a greeting expected string. So it's saying that I expected string, but you're passing a number. Okay, let me remove this entirely. If I remove this and save this, you can see it says that failed prop type. The prop name is marked as required, right? Prop name is marked as required, but the value is undefined. So it's saying that the name is required, but I got undefined, right? The trade-off here is you can expect these prop validations, but the thing is it throws as warning. It's not an error. So that's the issue here. So yeah, you might have to write some extra code to handle this one as error. Okay. So that's the second thing. If you don't know TypeScript, use prop types. Use it everywhere. Do not ignore it. Okay. Great. And the next thing is context over Redux. This is one of the things that I personally advise many of you guys to do it, because whenever you are learning React, right? So many of you tend to choose some courses on Udemy and everything. That's not a bad thing, though. I'm not actually telling you that you have to buy course here and there. I'm just saying that most of the courses are created few years before, like 5 years before or 6 years before or 3 years before, something like that in Udemy. And these courses tend to use Redux for as base for everything, because at that time, right, Redux was popular. Redux was used everywhere. So even now the React developers the beginners who are coming into React field, learning React and everything, they tend to refer those, and they tend to think okay, Redux is best choice for building application, state management and everything. Or if you're in that impression Redux is the good one, then actually don't do it. Okay, try to reconsider it, because Redux was good. I'm not saying it's bad. Even now it's actually good, but it's actually involves writing lots and lots of code and lots of configuration. Okay, because initially we didn't have context, right? So we were forced to use Redux, but right now React is good. React has become more mature. React is providing you with this something called context API, which you can use over Redux. You don't need Redux right now. There is no use. So you can use context API. So the way it works is something like this. So here you go. So initially the way we needed was, let's say we have a component here, component A, and then we have component B here, and then we have component C here. Okay, and then if we wanted to pass some data, right, we have to, let's say component B is a child of component A and component C is a child of component B. Okay, so now if C wanted some data, right, component A has to pass to B and B has to pass to C. So it was like drilling it inside the props. We call this as prop drilling. Okay, because we didn't have any way to manage the states, right? Because let's say this component A makes the API call to get the data. Okay, and then it has to pass down to C. That was one of the issue. This was actually happening. There was many use cases where this might happen, right? So that's the reason Redux came. So what Redux did was that it used to maintain a separate state, okay, separate state globally, where components can directly access it without needing to dependent on each other. So they don't need to depend on A or B. They can easily access the state separately. And this actually was working out, but the thing is, to achieve this you have to write a lot of configurations and lot of connecting there and here, and lot of dispatch the actions, capture them with reducers, update them with reducers. So write an reducer to add a data, write a reducer to update the data, write a reducer to get the data. So it was a lot of code. Okay, so then context API came in. So context API does the same thing, okay, but in a better way. Okay, you don't need any action dispatchers, or you don't need any reducers or anything. You can directly use context. Context sits between on top, and you can actually and the best thing about context is you can encapsulate it. So what I mean by encapsulate it, so basically if you want only this component to access that context, you can do that. You can set up this scope only to this component. You can actually access only by that, and these components won't get any access. Okay, so you can do the same thing with context in a better way with less number of code. Okay, so start looking at context API in React. It's a React feature. Okay, it's not like some library or anything. It's a React feature. You get a hook as well to work with it. So try to work with context. Let's drop Redux here. Okay, so that's the third one. So I always go with context. Next thing is co-locating state. So co-locating state is something that's very it's kind of confusing though, but it's very easy to implement, and this takes some time for you guys to implement, especially if you're a beginner. Okay, so what happens is, I have an example here. I have a bad code and the good code. So in the bad code you can see we have my component and the child component, where the state is in the my component, right? And then the child component has a button where if I click on that, the counter increases. So if I refresh this, if I click on this, you can see it's perfectly fine. There's no issue. I'm able to get the counter here, 1 2, see here. right? But the issue here is that since the state is declared on the parent component and the update is being made from the child component, so whenever you click on this button, both parent and child re-renders. So I have a picture of that as well, and I've actually written a blog for that as well. So if you go to, yes, you can see here, right? I've also posted a picture of this profiler in React, which shows that both child and parent both are re-rendering every single time together. So you can see, right, this yellow mark, it means that both are re-rendering. So whenever I click on this button, this both the components re-renders. So how we can actually fix this? So let me comment this out and uncomment the good code. So this is called state co-locating. So basically you assess the situation, you think like where exactly is this state being used, okay, what are all the components does this state depend on, is dependency for. So right now this count is only dependency for child component, parent component has nothing to do with the count, right? That's the reason what we do is we move the state and the state update function to child component. Okay, so now if I update it, you can see the application doesn't behave differently. It still does the same thing, but the thing is the parent won't re-render now. Okay, the parent component, which is the my component here, won't re-render every single time. Only the child component does. Okay, and I've also attached a screenshot of the profiler for that here. Okay, so you can take a look at it as well. Everything is linked in the description, and also this code is linked in the description as well. So this is called state co-locating. So basically assess a situation here. You will just analyze like what's happening, where does this state belong to, who are the users of this state, and based on that you place this state in appropriate place where it is only used by the components that needs it, and the other component who doesn't need it won't be affected by its updates. Okay, because we all know this thing, right? If one state updates, the component whoever depends on that state re-renders again. So we might have to take care of this. This is called state co-locating. It's fairly simple, but just give a glance and then try to write a code about this. You'll actually understand it. And when you start implementing this, you'll actually see your React application improves in performance, and you don't have to do any much complex stuff. Okay. And apart from that, guys, we have like few more things like follow React standards. Okay, so there are standards like Airbnb, and there are standards like even React developers also posted some standards like how to follow the folder structure and everything. So follow those things. I'll link down few links in the description as well where you can actually follow. There are 4 links that I usually follow. I'll just add those links. Okay, so you can follow those things. And the next thing is start using React developer tools. So if you go to Google and search for React dev tools, you'll actually get it. It's a Chrome extension. It's available as Firefox extension as well. So you can actually use this. So here what you can do with this is that you can actually edit your component state and props from this. So let's say you want to test like what happens if I enter this and everything. What happens if you enter a number? What happens if you enter a Boolean value for your states or props? You can do that. Okay, so what you do is you just install this to your Chrome or Firefox or whatever browser you're using, run your React app in localhost 3000 or 2002, whatever it is, and then open up this extension. That's all. This will line out all the components that you have, and you can click on any of the components that you have, and then you can get all the details. Like you can see here, right? It's actually showing, let's say you click on this to do text input, it actually shows what are the props and what are the states you have. Okay, and then based on that you can click on it, and then you can also update it. Let's say I want to update this state from try React devs to awesome React dev tools. I can just click on this and start typing awesome React dev tools, and that will reflect in the application. Okay, so you get an access to directly modify the states and props from this particular tool, and along with that you'll also get access to something called profiler. So this is the one I was showing you this one, right? This image, this was actually taken from a profiler. So what profiler does is it actually gives you insights on your application, like what is the amount of time that your application is taking to re-render or render into the DOM, and what are all the components that are being affected by the state update, all these things. So these things become very crucial for you to debug your React application. Like why exactly is my React application slow? The answer would be, the first thing to determine is, if I click on this button, what are the things happening in the background? You need those data, right, to debug your application. So you get that with profiler. Okay, and apart from that, right? Apart from that, you can use UI libraries, guys. So this is one of the things that I actually advise many people to do. So many people think that writing CSS from scratch is what actually makes them a good developer, but I don't know why people actually are in this particular mindset though, in this myth that writing CSS is good. Actually it's bad. So do not write plain CSS. Even if you want to write CSS, don't just write plain CSS like that. Okay, start using Sass. Okay, this one, SASS. Start using this. Okay, start using Sass with your React. And the reason why you have to use Sass is because it's a preprocessor. So people might use Chrome, people might use Firefox, they might use Safari, Brave, Opera, whatever they want, right? We cannot just tell the user to like, hey, use Chrome. We cannot do that, right? That's the reason you have to make sure that your CSS supports all these browsers. And the best way to do that is with preprocessors. So when you use Sass, you will essentially get CSS code. There is no separate syntax. Of course, you'll get some extra features with this. But the thing is, when you write CSS, Sass will actually convert that, and then it will make sure that wherever your whichever browser that your application is open with, it will support that browser. So you'll basically get cross-browser support, and no matter if your user is using Firefox, Chrome, or whatever it is, they'll be able to experience the full application. Nothing would break. Okay, so use Sass if you want to write CSS from scratch, or else you can use libraries like ChakraUI. So ChakraUI is something that I use in all of my project. So it's one of the best that I've actually seen. It's very easy to use, and there's it's very less configuration. Even compared to Tailwind, it's very less configuration here. And you can pass styles as props to this, and then you get pre-built components, amazing components from here as well. For example, if I go to input, you can see these are like pre-built. So I can actually use input, or if I want a modal, so I can just search for modal, and then I can click on this. You can see a pre-built component. So all these are pre-built, and the best thing about Chakra is that it's accessible. So the Chakra maintainers who actually maintain this particular project, they make sure that all their components are accessible. So accessibility is 100% defined here. So I don't have to define it myself. Okay, and it also provides you some of the utility hooks that lets you handle like booleans or disclosure, like open and close and everything, and it basically reduces a lot of code from your side. Okay, for example, if you're working with modal, right, you have to handle this is open and on open and on close, right? So is open will give you whether it's open or not. On open would let open the model, on close will close the model. So you can see Chakra gives you this hook that defines all these functions for you. Let's say it doesn't give you that, then what? Then you have to define a state to maintain is open. Then you have to define a function to open it, and then you have to define a function to close it. So there's two functions, one state from your side, but here it's just one line of code. Okay, so it saves you a lot of time. And coming to Material-UI, I'm not big fan of Material-UI and Tailwind UI. I hate Material-UI because you have to write a lot of things for that to get one component working. And then to customize it, it's pretty hectic to customize it, right? So even the colors, you have to customize the colors, you have to do a lot of things, right? And then Tailwind, I'm not really sure what to talk about it, so I haven't used it much because I don't like to write a lot of class names for every single components that I use, and it's not really development friendly according to me. So I would suggest try Chakra once, you'll love it. Okay, and then at last I have one thing, start using React query, guys. Just one last thing. So here you can see, right, I have an example for you guys. So let's say you have to make an API call and then get the data, right? So here you can see this is what we usually do, right? We write a fetch function and we use, what happened? Okay, and then we use Axios, then we write the API endpoint here, and then we get the data and then we update it here. And then we'll have is loading, is error state, and then we set that, like, is error, is loading, and then finally, we just set the loading false and everything, right? The basic stuff. This is what we all do, right? And then we add that in use effect to fetch the data, and then we show that if data is available, we show that data, which is perfectly fine. And imagine doing this for every single module in your application. Let's say you have building this dashboard which has like a lot of API calls. So whenever you click on something, you make an API call. In that case, it's really bad, right? That's the reason we use something called React query. So if I uncomment the import here, so you can see in React query, it's really simple. It's just 2 lines of code. That's it. You just return, Axios, you have to import Axios. Okay, so you have to say like what is the from asynchronous call that you have to make. So this actually is asynchronous call, right? We are making an API call, and then you have to give it a name. You have to say like you have to basically give it a unique name so that you can handle it later. If you wanna abort the call, if you wanna kill the call in between, you have to give it a name. Okay, and then this gives you the all the things that's required, like is loading, error, data, whatever it is. It gives you everything. And let's say you want a function to refetch, you have to rerun this whole thing. So you get like refetch as well. Refetch. So you can actually run this function to rerun this API call again when in any of your function. Okay, and also let's say this depends on some data and that data is not available yet. You can also call skip or enable. Yeah, you can call enable true. I'm gonna say true here because there's no dependency on here, but let's say this API call depends on some ID that is being fetched from another API, and then you want this API to wait until that ID is available. So what you can do is you can just say ID. So when this not available ID is false, this enable will be false, so this API won't run, this query won't run. Only when the ID is true, this enable will become true, and then this query will run. So these React query guys have thought of everything, guys. And moreover, the best part here is you get retries. So let's say your API fails for some reason, the React query will retry again. Okay, and it will retry 3 times again, and then it will fail. Okay, but here you won't get that, right? It's just direct fetch. But here, not only it will retry, but we'll also cache it. So let's say you make an API call again. So in React, the weird thing is sometimes your component might re-render again, causing this API call to be made again, right? In that case, this won't actually hit the server. It will actually get the cache data. This will save you a lot of things in React. Okay, so start using use query. Okay, I mean React query. Okay, and in React query, actually, you have to make one setup as well. In index file, if you can see, you have to make this setup, and this is pretty simple. You can just go to the docs. Okay, and then the next thing about React query is that, okay, I've already mentioned the caching part. So again, using Axios is fine. If it's a small project or something like, a portfolio project or something, it's totally cool. Use Axios. But if you're using building application, right, a big application which has a lot of interactions and everything, use React query. Okay, it will really save you a lot of time, and it will also save you a lot of code as well. You can see, right, look at the code here and look at the code here. How many look at these is loading and is error. Imagine adding loading state for every single component where you make this API call. It's hectic, right? But here it's very simple. Okay, so with that said, guys, one last bonus thing that I want to show you is use linting. Okay, so there is this thing called ESlint, Prettier, and Husky. Okay, so use these 3 tools. These 3 tools are actually like, a linter for JavaScript. So this ESlint is actually a linter which will help you to it will actually check whether if you're using double quotes for string or single quotes for string, or whether you have semicolon or not. You can define these things. Okay, because when you're working on a project in a company, right, so these guys will have some rules like what you can use in your code. Some people prefer not to use semicolons, some people prefer to use semicolons, some people prefer to go with 4 tabs indentation, some people prefer to go with 2 tab indentation. So you can define all these rules in ESlint. Okay, and then Prettier is actually helps you to format your code. So what happens is many of us use VS Code or whatever the tools you want, and then you will have your own configuration there, right? When you click on save, it will save according to your system settings, right? So that doesn't work for some other people. So some other people doesn't like having 4 indentation. They like having 8 indentation, 8 tab indentation. Pretty weird, but sure. So in that case, what happens is, 8 tab is really strange, but I'm just giving an example. So what Prettier will do is whenever you do git commit, right? So Prettier will run it, and then it will actually format the code according to the company standards. Okay, so even if your teammates are pulling the code, updated code, you will get in a proper format. Then you can hit save it according to your system preference, but the code that's in the company's repo would be in a proper standard format. Okay, it's very important. Husky at the end is actually a git hook. So what this will do is so this will run Prettier and ESlint and whatever the other rules that you specify when you hit git commit. So we'll say git add all your files. When you do git commit and hit enter, it won't actually commit. Okay, this Husky will run first. It will check the ESlinting, it will check the Prettier, it will check all the rules, it will check whether you're following the code or not. And if you want to run the test before committing, you can do that here as well. And once everything returns true, if there is no error that is thrown, okay, then Husky will let Git to commit it. Then your commit will happen, then you can push. Okay, if one of these steps actually throws error, Husky will actually abort the process. It won't let you commit. It won't even let you commit. It's very annoying, but it's actually useful. We are doing this in Duolearn. I've actually set this up for our Duolearn platform. I was not able to commit like easily. So whenever I try to commit for Git, I keep running into issues like, the linting issue, the Prettier issues. I have to go back, make everything better, and then I have to commit it. This is annoying for me, but the thing is, this helps in long run. The code will be proper. In the ESlint lets me to remove all the dead code. The dead code are like, when you import something and you won't use it. So that's a dead code. That's essentially in the code base. You have to remove it. And ESlint lets me do that. So ESlint will throw an error saying that, hey, you have a dead code in your app. You just imported something, but you didn't use it. Remove it. So I'll remove that. And Prettier helps me to keep my code organized. So this way, even though it's annoying for me, it will help all my team, right? Because the code is organized, the code is well maintained, there's no dead code. So when they pull, or they'll get a good code over there, right? And even test cases. So whenever I push, the test case runs. So if there's anything that fails, I'll be able to fix that and then push it. So the people who pull my code, they can be confident knowing that the code, whatever we have over there, it's actually better. There is no issues over there, right? So that's the reason, start using these things. Okay, I can make a video on how to set this up, but we'll do this with an application. So we'll build an app and then we'll actually set these things up so that you'll actually understand like how amazing these things are and how annoying these things are as well. Okay, so with that said, guys, so that is it for today. And of course, you can also go with this blog and then learn more about it. And stay in touch with the React groups and everything. Stay in touch with Duolearn as well. So because the way you can get some more information about like what's happening with React or any other tools is staying in touch with the forum and community. So stay in touch with them, follow some of the core developers on Twitter and LinkedIn. So they'll keep on sharing their the progress and everything. So you will be able to understand, you'll be able to get access to the early features in React as well. So recently I saw a hook called use. So that literally replaces using Axios and everything. Not Axios, the use query. So you saw this use query, right? This use query. So there was a hook called use in React. That's in latest React, which is not released yet. It's experimental. That's not stable yet. So that actually gives you all these things. So basically, React developers are doing something. I'm actually getting my hands on that. If I'm able to get my hands on that, if I'm able to write some code on that, I'll make a video about it. Okay. So with that said, guys, thank you so much. And if you have any doubts or if you have anything, suggestions or anything, drop a message in the chat. And of course, join Discord, Duolearn Discord or Duolearn's WhatsApp or Telegram, whichever you guys use or prefer. And we'll stay in touch. Okay. With that said, thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.